Pinot Noir, and it's kind of known as this heartbreak grape, which is interesting, and other people have different views on it, and I'm sure we'll hear some really personal views a little bit later as well from one of our guests. But it's an early budding grape, early flowering grape, and so you want the season to really be a good one so that you can ripen these grapes. And Pinot Noir itself is a tight cluster on the vine. And because it's so tight and it's such a black but yet thin-skinned grape, it's one of those ones that are really susceptible to pretty much anything out there that could destroy it. So like powdery mildew, like just everything. Leaf roll, like it could just succumb to pretty much everything. Now, I did post out that I'd kind of do a little like science geek for you a bit, because one of the things, like my previous background was science and specifically in molecular biology, and Pinot Noir was one of those grapes that actually was one of the first few to get their genome sequenced. And that was in 13 years ago in 2007. Year Tristan was born, that's why I can remember it. But one of the things that I think is really cool about this grape is that not only does it need this perfect climate to grow in and this perfect season to grow, it's highly, it can mutate really easily. But it's one of those grapes, it's like you have the Pinot Noir, you have the Pinot Gris, and you have the Pinot Blanc. And it mutates so easily, it can become Pinot Gris and then Pinot Blanc. And it's like a reverse mutation. So it's multi-directional. So if you have Pinot Blanc, it can mutate to become Pinot Noir. And then if you look at, people used to think years ago that Pinot Meunier was kind of one of the parents, like crossed with Traminer. Not the case. But Pinot Meunier is one of those really unique grapes as well, because it's chimeric. And chimeric, to the science nerd over here, is that it has two sets of DNA. It's like two people, two grapes within a grape. But each of those DNA sequences have a mutation in it, so it's not Pinot Noir, but it's not always it either. And so it's just, to me, it's a mind, like I'm like, I want to know more about it, kind of interesting facets for me. But in terms of Pinot Noir, which we're talking about, it's grown all over the world. There's a lot of areas that are super known for Pinot Noir, of course, Burgundy being one of them, New Zealand being another one. It's like their second largest growing crop outside of Sauvignon Blanc there. And then looking at places in the US, such as Oregon, and Willamette Valley is one of those places that's super known for growing Pinot Noir as well, which is one that I happen to be drinking today. But in terms of Pinot Noir, you can get those really expressive fruit flavors like the red cherry and the raspberry, and sometimes some currant in there. But then it can get really interesting depending on its terroir and where it's from. You can get those mushroom notes, and you can get those like little bit more spiciness to it as well. But yet it's such a temperamental grape at the same time that if you look at things in Burgundy and they're like, if this is the plot and the other guy has a plot right here, you'd think they're going to be the same, but they can be completely different. And that's why I think Pinot Noir is one of my top wines that I like to drink, because I never know what I'm going to get. Like in my head, I'm quoting like Forrest Gump, like box of chocolates kind of thing. So for me, I really enjoy the nuances, and especially if you have like a young Pinot and then you're aging it. And so some of the aged like Burgundies or Oregon or like the really good Pinots, you can age them for like 15 years, and that bottle age adds like a new characteristic to it, which is super fun. But then you have the nice, light, fresh ones. And it depends on the winemaker and what they want to do too, because some places will put in like full bunches of the berries, which can create more of those like intense fruit notes as well as like some of those floral notes in it as well. And I'll pass it over to Craig.
Yeah, I was welcome everyone, and it's great to see you all again, and some new people, and Howard visiting from Oregon. I was going to talk a bit more about different Pinots from different places. Mm-hmm. Interesting, in the Charlotte talks about the difficulty in getting good Pinot and how, yeah, it ripens early, but in a warm climate, but it tastes better when it's in a cooler place where it's more can make it a slower ripening. And when it gets overripe, which you can argue it does in some terroir, even though people from there may really like that style, those of us who learned in the SOM program that Burgundy is the kind of the mecca of Pinot Noir, we tend to not go towards those super ripe, juicy Pinots as much as some other people. But it's interesting when you travel around, like I've done the New Zealand Pinots and Australia and South Africa, and of course Canada. All across Canada, we have Pinot from Nova Scotia to British Columbia, and in the U.S., of course, we have California, and quite a bit of difference in California from the cooler parts of Sonoma all the way down to the sideways country, and then I'm up in Oregon, where it's makes really good wines that are, I think, very similar to the good ones in New Zealand and the good ones in Canada. But there's a lot of variety, and Charlotte and I on these little sessions, we've talked a lot about sommelier's choice or our personal choices, or what critics think are good versus what the consumer likes. And I always tell people, your own opinion is the right one when it comes to what you like, of course, but our job is to try to widen your mind and learn to appreciate things you might have not liked so much the first time around. So that stylistic change, and you see it in every one of the countries and regions, depending on vintage, etc. Like there's been overripe juice bomb Pinots from Burgundy too, in super hot vintages like 2003. And depending where you are in Australia or New Zealand, you can get a really elegant style, the lighter floral, light cherry, not much oak style. And you can also get the higher alcohol, darker black cherry, even bordering on darker fruit. So even though we think of Pinot as this light, low tannin wine in general, it actually is quite versatile. And probably, we talked about Riesling a few weeks ago. To me, that's the real terroir white in terms of expressing terroir, and Pinot Noir is one of the red grapes that's similar. It's kind of, when you come out of the SOM program, you love Pinot, you love Riesling. And I think it's because they're somewhat similar in that they really express terroir and have a huge variety. So
and everybody just type in what they're drinking. And if it's not Pinot, that's quite okay. Just in your little chat box.
Yeah, do you want to do your review of yours first, or shall I go first?
You can go ahead.
Maybe I should go first because Howard's here to talk about the wine you're drinking after you, maybe. I'm drinking from Chile, which I didn't really mention in those countries, but we've seen a big boom in Chile. This is the Errázuriz Max, kind of their somewhat Reserva Pinot Noir, but still it's only around $20 here in New Brunswick. I also have a bottle of Connoisseur here as a backup, which is the Bicicleta, which is my pick almost every year in New Brunswick for the best, I don't like saying cheap because it sounds bad, but inexpensive Pinot, and it's only around 13, 14 bucks, good every year. I was at Errázuriz a few years ago. I'm going to put up a picture if the share screen works while I'm talking. And that should work, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm like, don't look at my shared screen.
What's that?
I was like, don't look at my shared screen, but I'm like, y'all saw it anyway.
I don't know if you guys can see that picture.
Yeah.
Yes?
I can.
You can?
I can as well, yeah.
Errázuriz is in the Aconcagua Valley, which is not as, I guess, well known as some of the other regions in Chile, like Mapo. But it's as you can see in that picture, there's a lot of elevation options, and that's the thing about Chile. Regardless of what grape you're talking about, they can choose elevation, and it's a long, skinny country, north to south. So there's a lot of options for every type of grape. Now, Errázuriz, I wouldn't say is a Pinot specialist, but they do a nice job. They do a good job on pretty much everything. The style of this Max it's, I would say, an in-betweeny. Like, it isn't as juicy and ripe as wine from like the Santa Barbara, like the sideways kind of Pinots in Cali. And it's not, and even Otago in New Zealand, we think of it as a cool climate country, but I've been to Otago producers like Felton Road, some say the best Pinot in New Zealand. I mean, they make, 14.5% alcohol, big round Pinots down there. So their warm climate Pinot is not just California. So the Chilean style is heavily varied and from region to region. So I would say the Errázuriz, this one it's in that right, but not really big, like not boozy, and they haven't oaked it hardly at all. The Connoisseur, the inexpensive one, is much lighter and almost feels like there's no oak. It's a really light, kind of that light, really fresh style, the kind that people who think all red wine should be big and dark and powerful, they look at it and go like, is that even wine? But those of us who love Pinot, we don't care about the color. We care about aromatics, finesse, elegance. And I have to say, this Errázuriz is, it could be the best one in that kind of $20 range. A lot of disappointing Pinot Noirs around the world for $20. A lot of times you got to spend way more to get something super impressive. So when I find something like this for 20, I'm pretty happy. So that's what I'm drinking. It's nice.
I have a visitor. I'm on video right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's great. Did you want to show us any more? Yeah, you're going to be seen. You can't see you, but
I'll show some other pictures. But you go ahead.
Do you want to speak on the different regions that have Pinot Noir, and whether it's 100 or it has to be a specific amount before they can call it Pinot Noir?
Oh, that's a pretty political one. I don't know really if I want to go there.
Okay.
Although I do know that in the California and even in Ontario, there are some Pinot Noirs that have a lot of Syrah in them, and they're dark, and they don't. I mean, and some people go, "Oh wow, that's the best Pinot I've had. Look at the color," and I'm like, "You're off base here. Pinot, it's not about the color; it's about the wine. And if you like Syrah, well, you should probably drink Syrah." I'm one of those radical people who thinks all wines you shouldn't be able to have the grape on the label unless it's 100%. That's my opinion.
Okay. Thanks for weighing in on that.
Mm. So taste your, I want to know how that old wine is doing.
Oh, I know. I'm just like pulling. Can you give me back the screen? I don't see anything.
How do I turn off that darn thing? Stop share.
There we go. And nobody is in. We had a lot, if you want to take time to read the chats there, Craig, we have a lot of I don't think anybody has the same.
Well, that's cool.
Pinot Noir here. So they're all different, which is fantastic. So I've had this wine now for some time, and this is a 2004 Citation Oregon Pinot Noir. And I'm going to hold it up as close as I can because it was laying flat in my cellar, but I don't know if you can actually see like the dust that's on that. So I decided, with some encouragement, not to wipe it down so you could actually see it, but it's been laying properly. It's only dusty on one side. And I was like really careful pulling it out. And at the same time, I was like, oh, I hope it's still good. And of course, it is, which is fantastic. Now, this one, it does have a little bit of sediment into it, but it's not like, you know, you're not chewing on anything. But again, it's a 2004. So we're looking at, you know, 16 years. Like, wow. Like, my kids aren't even that old. But on the nose of this one, you get those really still like cherry notes to it. You get this floral note. And one of the things that you might want to try with your glasses when you're smelling, especially with any of wine, but with Pinot, I find is that there's different levels when you're smelling. And so this is like the low rim versus the high rim. And you get kind of different notes depending on how you're smelling. And you get on the top part here a little bit of those like blossom, like that floral, maybe violet. I put a question mark beside it. But you get that red cherry, you get some earthiness to it. But when you taste this, it's all still there. Like now I wish I hadn't opened it because I think it could last like a few more years because the acidity is still there. It's zinging right through here. You get that cherry, the raspberry, and the tannins. I would say that they're medium, maybe even a little bit more because it's really present. Like this is a zingy wine. I'm like excited about it. And I don't know, sorry, my glass is probably a little dirty, but if I swirl it, maybe you can see some of the like the little particles in it. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. But in terms of color, it's like this nice bricky garnet color. I don't know if I can hold something up that's white so people can kind of see, people that are interested.
It's lighter than I thought, or darker, less brown than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it is. I was expecting it to be a bit more brown on that. And with that, we just got our notification on limited minutes. That took my cursor. I'm not sharing anything, right? I am gonna go down here and.
Meaning we can go as long as we want. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
There it is. And Howard, you are unmuted. Now, everyone, this is Howard, and he's going to speak for maybe a little bit. And this is a wine he made. And I had the pleasure of meeting him a few times, and his daughter and his wife when they visit New Brunswick, which he does. You do come occasionally. Right now, of course, you're not here. You're home.
So I'm at home in Seattle right now. My vineyard's in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. So that's about 220 miles south of the house. In no traffic, it takes me 3.5 hours to get there. And right now there's no traffic. And fortunately, agriculture is an essential business. So I get to move around as I wish. And I'll be back in New Brunswick everything permitting this fall, and in Atlantic, Canada. I like to fish. I fly fish, so I go to the Miramichi, and been doing so since I was about 14. So the Oak Forest Citations are top-level wine, and actually the current release is the 05. It's a project that I really don't think anybody matches in that it's our best barrels, and the wine is small batch fermentation. We punch it down, do piage twice a day during fermentation. And if I use terms that people aren't familiar with, maybe type a quick question, and I'm happy to explain. But
when you were making this wine, Howard, were they individual? Was it clusters?
We tend to shy away from whole cluster because when you do that, yes, you get the burst of fruit, which you get with whole berry, but you also are introducing the stems into the fermentation. And a lot of tannin will leach out into the wine. So you then can have a problem of maybe excess tannin in the wine that then, as a winemaker, you try to remediate. So maybe I'll
I'm
step
just
back.
gonna jump in there a second for a couple people
Yeah.
who you know are like studying more about wine. And the thing with the whole clusters and what Howard's saying about getting those stems and the seeds are there. So as they're like mashing it down or they're doing the pump over, they're still being exposed to that juice. And that's how they're extracting those phenolics and getting it in. And it can give you those more like more bitter notes.
Harsh bitter tannins is what you get from the stems. It's like if you chew on a piece of wood, you get that sort of harsh bitterness. Most of the tannin with Pinot Noir you get from the skins and from the seeds. And having been in the wine business now 45 years, I believe that Pinot Noir is a wine that first we make in the vineyard. You got to grow really good grapes. They've got to be balanced. As both Charlotte and Craig said, it does not do well when you've got a high alcohol Pinot Noir or an overly fruited with high sugar. It needs
And what
balance.
do you do with in terms of your canopy management? Because they do have like kind of a smaller leaf, but
Well, we do a lot of things. So we're having bud break this weekend as we speak.
early.
It's a touch early. Normally we figure April 15, and it's happening now here on April 11, April 12. And the clock starts running. What you want to do is get a lot of light into the fruiting zone. So we will strip leaves away from the fruit after the fruit has set and as it's ripening. We will also go through and hedge the vine so that it looks neat and there's not a lot of shading. But we will also go through and remove green clusters or clusters while it's green. We're managing the amount of fruit that the vines and the vineyard are producing. So if you go with a fairly heavy fruit set, say 4.5, 5 tons per acre, you end up with the bright raspberry, strawberry, blackberry fruit, say with the center stone that I've got here, which is a lot like the wine that I used to produce, Firesteed.
Yes. And so I just wanted to clarify because I can see some of the comments.
Yep.
Firesteed was part of Howard,
Right.
but it is now no longer.
Right.
And so the new stuff that you're going to be seeing, what's that, Howard?
I sold Firesteed 3 years ago.
Yes.
Became happily debt-free, but I held on to my 202 acre Erratic Oaks vineyard in the heart of the Willamette Valley, and I held on to my citation label. And by holding on to those two, I was able to negotiate out all the teeth of a non-compete. So I've come up with the new label, Centerstone, which is currently available in Nova Scotia, but it is working its way through the system. So it should be available in the next week or so in New Brunswick. Both Pinot Noir and an unoaked Chardonnay. They should be $25 a bottle.
And that's the 2017?
2017 on both the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir from Centerstone. And there will also be some 2005 citation, and that'll be just under 100 Canadian.
So do you have wines that we're going to, I know most of us in the industry here, we know you from Firesteed, and we haven't had them for a little while, and I guess this is why. But do you have wines that we're going to be getting that are in that kind of price range around the $20? Like that, you had a really good Pinot Gris, and the Pinot Noir is a lot too.
So there will be the Centerstone Pinot Noir, which is 100% from my Erratic Oaks vineyard. And that'll be, I think, $24.95 in New Brunswick. And the Centerstone Unoaked Chardonnay will be the same price. And again, It's 100% from Erratic Oaks Vineyard.
Okay.
And Erratic Oaks is in the heart of the Willamette Valley, right across the road from Freedom Hill. We're about to get our own sub-AVA. It'll be called Mount Pisgah.
Very interesting.
Cool. Thanks, Howard.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Now, I was just kind of going to go through and see what people were drinking, because everybody's kind of drinking different
There's
things.
a lot of interesting wines there. I've been sending notes to people, but I see Vassal's drinking Pearl Morissette, which is one of Canada's, I would say, top Pinot Noirs, and somebody else was drinking Norman Hardy, which is probably our most award-winning premium Pinot Noir over the years. There's tons of great ones in BC and Ontario, and somebody's mentioned Lightfoot and Wolfville in Nova Scotia, which is doing a nice job, particularly in the better vintages there. But yeah, some really interesting wines. I see some California stuff there, some variety.
So Heather, do you want to unmute your mic, and then I see that you're drinking the Norman Hardy, and just give us like kind of a like quick, what do you smell, what do you taste? Did I put you on the spot? Are you okay?
I don't know how to do it.
You did it.
Yeah,
I hear you.
Okay, so I get a lot of strawberry and red cherries, really fresh fruit in it. But I did get some leather and some cinnamon on the nose. And then on the palate, again, I got that fresh fruit, cranberry, raspberry, and strawberry. And then I did pick up a little bit of vanilla in it as well, and then some tobacco and fennel. But I liked it. I thought it was very good. I gave it a medium plus finish. Yeah, so I'm quite enjoying it.
Excellent. Thank you, Heather. Now, someone else is drinking the Russian Jack. I don't see who it is. I just saw the word pop up on my screen.
Hi, it's Helene.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Helen.
Nice to see you again.
So to start off with, Pinot Noir was probably my least favorite wine until I took Craig's wine course, I'm thinking 17, 18 years ago. And now it's my absolute favorite. So, and for those reasons, Charlotte, it is that everyone is very different. And Craig also knows this, that my son's name is Jack, and he just turned 18. And so this was on sale at NSLC. I think it was $8 off or something. So I thought, hey, I'm going to try it. And I actually really like it. So it's from New Zealand. It's quite big. Same as everyone else, strawberry, cherry. Yeah, we're very quaffable.
And then I see some people are drinking Pete's Pure. I apologize because the sun is shining this way at me, so I can't quite see everything on my screen right now. Would anybody like to speak on Pete's Pure?
I am, but now I'm eating cheese. You know, you have to have some cheese with the wine. I would say that it's fruity, but not too fruity. And it's kind of like, there's like a little bit of like vanilla to it.
Yeah, some oak, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
Excellent, thank you.
I like that wine.
And I see someone has, there's quite a few here.
I'd like to hear the Pearl Morissette with Vassalin, because I know that winery really well, and Pearl Morissette is the most controversial winery in Canada, probably, other than Norm Hardy, which I've been chatting with Vassalin about the sexual harassment issues. But Pearl Morissette has caused a lot of controversy because they've had wines that did not pass VQA, but were excellent wines, and there's a lot of fighting. Like Psalms loved the wines, and so anyway, he put out a winery called Blackball Riesling because they were basically blackballed from being VQA. But he makes non-intervention kind of like natural wines, I would say, for the most part. So I'm curious how that Pinot's tasting, if Vincent can turn his mic on.
Yeah, it's tasting really good. I would say same as the cherry and raspberry kind of flavoring to it, or the notes. I wouldn't say it's as funky as his Blackball Riesling. So I've had that before, and that one definitely tastes different than a traditional Riesling.
Right.
Has a little bit of kind of natural wine notes to it, but I wouldn't say it's as crazy or as funky as some of the other wines that he's put out. But I'm enjoying it quite a bit. It's an expensive bottle, but they have free shipping from their winery to New Brunswick, so it was pretty good.
That's great to see people taking advantage of wine shipping to here, because as I've written out a lot of times in my Telegraph Journal column, a lot of the reason we don't have a lot of these great Canadian wines, and I get to taste them because I judge the national competition, but otherwise, the only way to get them is to buy them yourself, because AMBL can't justify buying, 2 cases of $40 Chardonnay or Pinot from top wineries in BC and Niagara. It's just a bad business model. It makes way more sense for people to buy them themselves directly, and that way the winery gets the profit and you get it at a reasonable price, because the shipping cost is way less than what the markup would be when the wines come here for a small winery like that.
I agree. And
we are just coming up to the 44 mark. I was going to say, can we open it up, and if anybody has any questions?
You just got muted for some reason there, Charlotte.
That's you, right?
I hear you now.
So I'm going to unmute everybody. So what you should know about a Zoom, if you're unmuted and you make noise, then your picture flashes up for everybody. That's what happens. But does anybody have any questions about Pinot Noir? Do you want to tell us what you're doing this weekend?
Drinking wine?
Absolutely.
Totally. Hey, I did want to make a note that I typed in the sort of the winemaking premise. So if people want to read that and want to take a look, it's there.
Thanks.
It was really great to have you on to talk about your wines today. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, Atlantic Canada is like a second home to me. So, as things get, I'll get political. As things get really weird here in the States, I want to move there.
I just kept messaging him on all social media platforms until he was like, hey.
How has COVID-19 impacted your winemaking?
Actually, being a farmer is probably the safest thing to do, because it's natural social distancing. So pruning happened and it was just fine. Our tractor work happened just fine. I self-distribute in the Seattle area, so I'm calling on restaurants and some retailers and making deliveries, but I now wear a mask when I'm out and about. You all may have heard that I live in Seattle. That's been a hot spot for COVID-19, so we're really careful, and I have very good friends who are doctors, and they scared the you-know-what out of me about all this.
Very cool. Thank you.
So it hasn't really changed what we do, and I don't think it will. The only other thing is worry towards harvest time, making sure that we get enough workers into the fields.
That was to you, Dan. I'm waving at you. Little guy.
Say hi.
Hi. And I just wanted to, I don't see them on here, but I wanted to say hi to Ed and Gina. Thank you so much for popping in. I haven't seen you guys for a while. I mean, I have seen Gina. Hope your tooth's okay. And hi, Lisa. We were chatting last night, so I'm glad that you guys were able to join in. And if you have any questions, feel free to either type them or ask them.
Let's start the video. Can I put the video on? No, thanks for the opportunity. This was fun listening in and just the various opinions and thoughts. The Pinot that I bought for tomorrow is actually a French one, inexpensive, a Rothschild one, 2017. So I'm curious to see what it will taste like tomorrow. So.
Excellent.
A lot of people are like to drink Pinot with their turkey, I think. Well, assuming you were talking about turkey. We did a chicken last night and had Pinot with the roast chicken, which I like. But yeah, Pinot is a great, I think it's a great turkey wine because the acid can handle the fatty gravy and everything. And great with dark meat.
You have an awesome background, Heidi.
Oh, thank you.
In Zoom.
Right. It was amazing.
And which one did you have? You had the Mirasso?
Yeah, exactly, from California. It's good. It's it actually smells like it would be like light, but when you drink it, it's like more of a medium. It's more of a medium flavor. It's really good, actually. And the hints of oak and vanilla are perfect at the end. So I'm really enjoying it.
Excellent.
For this.
Glad you could join us.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you.
And I don't know if Bernadette wanted to say anything about hers. She was drinking a French one from Paris. No, she's still on.
She might be gone.
Might be gone.
Mm.
Yes, I don't see her there. And do we have any other questions from anyone? Do you want to know anything about Pinot Noir or?
People just want to drink it, I think.
Absolutely.
One thing I'll throw in my opinion, we have it a lot with salmon out here. I do think, and it echoes a lot what Craig was saying, Pinot Noir is probably the most food-friendly red wine. If you're 4 people at a restaurant, when we can go back to restaurants, if one person's having fish, someone else chicken, someone steak, and someone else say pork, and you want to do red, Pinot Noir is going to work with all of them. Maybe not perfectly with everything, but it will work because it's got lovely fruit. And that, going back to what I said earlier, Pinot Noir is all about fruit. It's balanced fruit that's rich, but at the same time has vibrant acidity and modest alcohol.
Absolutely. Thank you, Howard. Really appreciate you coming in, and especially what time is it there? Like
it's about 11,
going on noon?
Yeah, quarter to noon. So normally I don't drink too much before noon, but I ran out to the stores early and got the shopping done and starting to do some food planning for the weekend in our semi-quarantine.
Yep.
Walk the dog and do all that.
Craig, one thing that maybe you can touch on, how would you pick a Pinot Noir that you intend to keep for years? Like, what would you be looking for?
You're asking me, Charlotte?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because with wines like that, you have to know them, or it has to be a wine that has pedigree. In other words, it's well documented, either by the winery itself. Like some wineries are really good at on their website of having charts that show which vintages of their wines can age and how long they expect them to age. So obviously those kind of resources are excellent. But when it comes to just the wines that I taste, as I'm tasting through the thousands of wines during a year, and you taste, every now and then I'll have a wine, I'm like, oh, that one I can lay down, I think. So you really have to either have documentation from someone else who knows the wine and has been buying it for years, or the winery keeps track of it, or you're going on your kind of gut feeling from tasting it. And one really good indicator actually is if you've bought a wine, and like we had the Erasmus Max that I have here. We had it last night for supper and there was still half a bottle left today, which is not typical for me, but anyway, there was a half bottle today. And when you taste the wine the 24 hours later, and if that wine is still tasting as good as it did when you put the cork in it the day before, then that's a very good indication that the wine can hang on for some time, I think. I don't know, I can't speak to whether that's a very scientific method, but there are wines that that I taste especially when I'm doing a bunch of wines at a time, and the next day you taste them again and a bunch of them are done, like even one day.
Oh, for sure.
Particularly red wines. White wines tend to hang on because of the acid, and you keep them in the fridge. But red wines fall apart far more quickly than people realize, which is a real problem with restaurants, as I'm sure you know. As you run the wine bar, you know that you had to be careful about such things, and that's why you have preservation systems. But if you notice a wine that's still great a day later, it's like, I could probably lay that down a while.
Well, I mean, I've already said it on this one. I did open my Citation 2004. It is my last bottle, and it could have gone a few more years.
Mm.
Because even now it's opened up in my glass and you get this like sweet, dried cranberry in it, which is like so pleasant and fragrant. Wonderful. And I'm not just saying that because Howard's here, because he knows I wouldn't do that.
No, that wine has some pedigree. I was telling Charlotte before we started the video that when that wine was first here in Atlantic Canada, it was a bit of curiosity because they were already aged, and we do an annual. My brother and I do an annual Pinot party between Christmas and New Year's in Halifax with a bunch of somms and wine nerds, and there's everything from old Burgundy to super premium California, BC, everything. And that wine, and of course we do it all blind, and that wine, I forget what vintage that was, Howard, you'll have to forgive me, but it was over 10 years old, I believe, and everyone thought it was super premium aged Burgundy. So there you go. That's when a bunch of sommeliers are tasting a wine and they all think it's some wine that we couldn't afford, and it was from Oregon, and it was a real eye-opener for a lot of people.
It makes me so happy to hear that. That's our aim. And that level of citation, we try to make every year, but nature doesn't always cooperate. And I'd expand a little bit, or maybe narrow down a little bit on what I look for age-worthy wines. Number one, they've got to have lovely fruit with bright acidity. But if the wine ends up having an alcohol over 14%, that's like a big caution flag to me. That I will probably then find the wine being high in alcohol and also correspondingly low in acidity. And if the wine doesn't have good acid, acid's like the skeleton of the wine. The fruit is the body. And if there's no skeleton, the wine falls apart. It may be lovely in its youth, but it'll fall apart very quickly. That's like your next morning test.
Right.
Thank you. So I see that we're just coming up to almost an hour mark. So thank you guys so much for jumping in and joining on Pinot. And I hope everybody really has a great Easter weekend. Stay home, inside. Don't go anywhere. Don't go hang out with people.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Take a lot, and don't touch your face. I was touching my face, but that bottle's dusty and I have allergies.
Awesome. Great to see everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Cheers.
Hold this up so you guys can see it.
Beautiful.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.